What do you mean you don't have hot sauce? This is Texas. We put Tabasco on cornflakes. You can play it safe if you want to, but you gotta risk it to get that biscuit. When it comes to business, you gotta look out for the cookout. That's how we do it in Texas. What do you mean my accent is too southern? Well, we're fixing to get it on Solve for X. Welcome to Solve for X, the podcast where curiosity meets collaboration. I'm Dr. Rick Fernandez, your host on this journey into the heart of education and innovation. Welcome back to another episode of Solve for X, where we're solving for K-12's biggest issues. I've got two special guests, two for the price of one. The dynamic duo co-founders of College Contact, Sophie Smith, Leah Guesman. Welcome to Solve for X.
Thanks, Rick. Great to be here. Yes, we're excited.
Oh, here we go. Y'all aren't twins, but y'all are working the twin magic already. So I'm going to try to keep us on track. But definitely excited to have you both here. Obviously, a huge need, not only across the country with the services y'all provide, but in my own household, I have someone living upstairs that needs to get on board with, hey, what am I going to do with my life? So perfect timing. For those that may not know about College Contact, can you share a little bit of the genesis of not only the company, but y'all's relationship, how to start, all of the backstory, if you will? And Sophie, why don't you lead us off?
Sure. So if you're not familiar with the story, we like to call it our happy little accident. When I was a college freshman, COVID hit. We all lost our jobs. My dad said, you got to get a job. So I started working for a friend. I ended up posting a video on TikTok about college access that went viral. We had thousands of students the next day emailing me, texting me, saying, hey, Sophie, I know you're only 19, but can you help me figure out what I want to do with my life? It really broke me down to the point where I was like, I need to make it my mission to support all of these students, and I need to figure out what the root cause of this problem is. So I made some phone calls. Obviously, I couldn't handle 5,000 students, just one 19-year-old. Leah was one of the first people I called. She has a funny story. She was working DoorDash at the time, dropped the pizza, came over. We started working together. That summer, we spent the whole summer studying everything from college, career, military access. And we compiled a team of who we knew at the time, right? Undergraduates. We started training this undergraduate network, and in 2020, early 2023, we started working and partnering with school districts across the country to solve the root of the problem where we saw it, which was these counseling departments in public schools are very overwhelmed. They're understaffed. They have a lot on their caseload. There's so many different individualized pathways now. Every student wants an individualized plan when it comes to post-secondary readiness. And so we thought, what if we could augment counseling teams, not with another software solution, but with a real human network that can come in and provide each student a one-on-one experience with a human that is near peer, right? A college student that's only a few years older than them, that can help them work through all of these things from college, career, military, direct to workforce, building a resume, things like that. And then the really cool added layer to it that we're really excited about is because our coaches are near peer, they share the experiences of the students they work with. Our coaching network has 30 different languages represented. So for EL students, that is a super big support, right? And then the other factor here is because they're college students, again, they have flexible schedules. So we're able to meet students where they are, whether that's during the school day, after school, or even on the weekends.
You summed that up very nicely. I was going to say, like, there's always two sides of the story. So, Leah, can you share, as you're, door dashing, like, how did this conversation really go from your perspective?
Yeah. I was very excited because I was like, I'd way rather work with kids and be doing something in education than be delivering strangers their takeout. So I jumped at the opportunity, and also just it was such moving work. I think something that has really empowered Sophie and I to do this well is that we were both coaches to hundreds of high schoolers before we sat in this management role, managed the network of coaches, built the curriculum for students. Like, we really lived it when we were undergraduates. And so I feel like we learned so much through that. And when we were graduating and deciding to give up our corporate jobs and do this instead, like, what really stood out to us was the magic of that near peer. just because I think any school administrator, any educator any parent that's been around a high schooler these days sees, um, high schoolers have become quite fearful and apathetic about their futures. And I think that near peer relationship that we got so much experience with when we were in college, it changes something there. And you see kids who didn't want to touch their future with a 10-foot pole suddenly excited and hopeful about the opportunities ahead of them because they can look and say, this person who also wasn't good at school in high school, or who also just wanted to skateboard after school, or also whose parents didn't go to college, or who immigrated from another country, they cross the chasm and they're happy. And they're like building a future for themselves. And wait a minute, like I might actually be able to do that. And so I think that's really been the driving force that's kept me and Sophie going. And that we feel like really is our niche in this space is that we're bringing kids in who might not have faith in their future yet, who might not be invested in the process yet. And that near peers, that's the secret sauce.
That's pretty awesome. I was hoping you'd give us a little bit more shock and awe. Like I dropped the Chinese food and ran to the car. No, I don't know how it was going to go. Okay, I've got to ask, how do you pitch this from a young entrepreneur's perspective? How are you pitching this to mom and dad, that your support networks? Like, are y'all like, hey guys, guess what? About to start a business, or how does that go down? So, if you share a little bit, I'm just very curious about this.
Yeah, so I think the wake up call was in college. At the time I was in business school, so I was learning all of these things that I needed, right, to eventually build my own business. But it's actually kind of a funny story. All of our, revenue at the time was coming in through Venmo. This was like when it was just a college side hustle, not like what it is today. And so I had manually kept track of everything on a spreadsheet. And my dad's in the finance world, so I had to look at it, and he was, like, pulling his hair out, like, "What are you doing? You need an accountant. You need to go talk to your accounting professor." And so I went to my accounting professor, showed him. He was like, "I had no idea that you girls were building this company, like, in your apartment. Like, we need to get the word out there, and we need to support you on this entrepreneurial journey." So our last year, as undergraduates, we had the opportunity to partake in like MBA programs through UVA. We had opportunities to work with some venture capitalists and different programs. We got into some accelerators, and that really allowed us to learn more of the business side of things before we embarked on this adventure, from legal to accounting to making sure our product was right. And I think that gave our parents a little bit more confidence in like, okay, you two are fully prepared to take this on. And it was really great because her family has a lot of deep ties in entrepreneurship, so that was great having her family support. My family has a lot of support in the business world, so we did have great community around us, and then obviously our UVA professors and that whole community was helpful.
And I'm just going to add, we both have this really interesting thing where our dads are both in business and our moms are both educators. And so I feel like everyone was singing hallelujahs when it was like, okay, the girls are going to do business, but they're also going to be in education. Like everybody was happy. So I think both of our moms were like, this is so cool. And we're so happy for you because we were both always passionate about that world too, growing up around them.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Very cool synergy there of kind of the public and private coming together to join forces for good, if you will. Y'all mentioned this the load on counselors, and as a former middle school, high school principal, assistant soup, like you that can't be understated. Most counselors caseloads, the number of students is at least 500, 600 to 1. And the reality of the situation is that there's no way you can get to every student. My first year in HISD as a dean, we didn't have counselors, so you did the discipline and you did all of the counseling and the course registration, all of that stuff, and it really opened up my eyes into the complexity of it, into the need one student has trying to figure out first of all, I got to graduate, right, and then I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. The reality of it is most adults don't know. I guess my question is with all of that, parents are just thinking that things are magically happening at their campus level. But from y'all's perspective, what are parents not seeing, that there's this huge gap for their students that may not be getting the type of resources that they need, not because they don't want to help, but because there's just such an overload of of cases and students that need one-on-one support? What are parents missing essentially?
Okay, I have something because I really have noticed this across all of our districts. I see it the most in our messaging. This really comes to life. All of the questions that were never making it to the counselor, and suddenly they're flooding our coaches' inboxes, right? So when kids get access to this app, the questions you have ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, they're asking these questions that they never would have made it to the counselor's office to ask these questions, right? And they're asking them all the time, whether it's I read a recent one. I want to do psychology. What minor do I have to do with that? Right. And they don't even know, you don't have to do a minor. A minor is a totally different thing. And the coaches are able to explain that. Or, I'm not going to go to college, I think, for 3 years because I'm going to work and save money. And they're talking to another coach who was from a low income family. And that coach says, hold on. We need to do the FAFSA. I paid for the remainder of what wasn't covered by the FAFSA with scholarships. Let me help you explore this. So many questions I think that these kids have that they're not given an easy enough opportunity to ask them and get this information so that their stress lowers, so that their goals become more achievable, and so that they're actually guided into what their next steps are. And like you said, that's no fault of the counselor, that there's just too many hurdles to get to that one-on-one time with, the one or two counselors that are at school. So I think that's a huge part. And language falls into that too. Time of day when the question comes up. Kids are so impatient. They have a question. If the counselor isn't sitting next to them in the room right then, they might never ask that question. But now they can do it on messaging, or they can book a meeting right there. And it really makes it more accessible for them. So that's one thing I've noticed. I don't know if you add anything to that.
Yeah, I think with Gen Z, we're so used to on demand, right then, right now.
Yeah.
So it's great with this. Like Leah was saying, they can get support immediately. I think the other thing too is what makes a counselor's job even infinitely more difficult is, again, with post-secondary planning, every student has an individual journey, an individual family situation. They have financial situation, right, that they have to account for, and then a goal, a dream, right, that they have to actualize. And so for a counselor to understand everything from aerospace engineering at one school to performing arts at another school to one student coming in wanting to do tennis through recruiting, and then another student wants to go directly to welding school. It's impossible to know all those pathways. We don't even intimately know all those pathways, but our coaches specialize and they're experts in all these different things. So it really provides it reduces that layer of complexity for parents, for students, and then it provides that we like to liken it to a nursing team to the counselor who is the doctor, right? We go out, we do all the prep work, we support students with those niche cases, and then also layer the levels of complexity so that every student can get that individualized attention.
You hit a bunch of points there that I kind of want to follow up on, and the complexity of where a student's interest may lie versus in the reality of, okay, I was interested, but do I want to actually do this? I always, give my daughter a hard time because she wanted to be a vet, and that's all she was telling my wife and I. And you don't want to go to A&M and be a vet. And oh, by the way, we were at pet store. You didn't want to pick up the gerbil, so there's probably an issue there with your career as a vet. Well, we got to pivot a little bit off the vet school, but you know, the generations are so different. My generation, you go to college and then you get a job and you stay kind of with that company or in that industry for the entire life of your career, and then you retire and you ride off in the sunset type of thing. Where now your students are going to have so many different jobs, roles within their working life. Do you get the sense that maybe my generation doesn't really understand how different it really is, and to have support that actually understands that and gets that I'm probably not going to figure out what I want to be, and I changed careers after 20 years in education, so I understand the how hard it is to do that. But isn't it very, very different than maybe your parents or my generation experience? And how different are you all seeing, the use cases?
Honestly, even with Gen Z to Gen Alpha, we're seeing changes, right? So every generation, there's going to be changes. I think with Gen Z, it's interesting because we've seen, we are and we're Gen Z as well. We're the generation that's grown up with technology. And so if you think truancy isn't using AI every day for every single thing, we are. Another fascinating thing that parents are blown away by is TikTok's the number one search engine for Gen Z. So we're not
Yep.
even going to Google or even chat. It's social media to find answers. And so I think the biggest thing we've seen on our end when it comes to post-secondary and kids thinking about their futures is it's very peer influenced and influenced by what the students are exposed to. So I'll give two different situations. In some of our urban school districts, right, when there's more access to things outside of school, more opportunities, and obviously the kids are plugged into social media, we're seeing a lot more interest in things like content creation, entrepreneurship, film production as career pathways down the road. Whereas in our rural communities, there's a lot more emphasis on staying local, right? Staying going direct to workforce or going to a community college or college nearby. But the shift there is, I think, when even when I was thinking about my pathway, I really saw college as um kind of the end result of my like, that was the destination. I do well in high school to go to college, right? I think now overall across all of our communities, when it comes to college specifically, kids are seeing it more as a pathway to a career, right? And that has to do a lot with ROI, the cost of college these days, student loans, I think the financial barriers, and then also colleges trying to transform their major departments so that it's more related to direct workforce building skills. But I think that's been actually a really positive shift is a lot of our kids are like, if I am going to go to college, right, I'm going to get the skills I need to pursue that degree that I need college for. Whether that's like pre-med or pre-law, they understand that that's the pathway to that goal rather than just I'm going to go to college and figure it out. I think that has kind of that culture is not as prevalent we've seen even over the last like year and a half, I think, for sure.
Wow. Y'all are kind of going against the grain, and by that I mean while everybody's diving heavy into AI and reducing kind of that human connectivity, y'all are utilizing y'all's coaches for that direct link, and I think that is a very good thing and a very powerful thing. And I use my daughter again for as an example. Like she needs that interaction and to be able to ask questions. To There's a comfort level there, so I want to applaud y'all on that. I've got to imagine that school districts are wondering, well, how do I know who my college coach, like, is it going to be like Van Wilder that's been there like 10 years? Like, how do I know I'm getting a quality coach? So can you talk a little bit about how you source your coaches and make sure that they are aligned with the needs of the high school students?
Yeah, totally. So, um, one thing, we do actually use AI, and one way that we use it is we're tracking all of these interests and things that our students talk about wanting to learn about, their backgrounds and things like that. And so that really is a big engine for our recruiter. So the students might not be chatting to the AI, but our recruiter certainly is, right? And so, one way that we make sure we're meeting student needs is through that. So tracking activity and signals from students about we need more coaches that are from this specific area, this specific school, this specific pathway or background. And so from that way, we're really meeting the student need. But I think what most administrators are really concerned about isn't do you have coaches that match my students' backgrounds? It's even more so do you have really high quality coaches who
Yes.
know what they're talking about and are delivering, quality objective advice, right? We don't want Bob coming in and just, preaching about whatever he thinks is the best for his unit, right? So you have some consistency in your post-secondary guidance curriculum. And then also just how do you know your coaches are good, safe people, right? And that's always going to be a primary concern for us when we're dealing with minors and kids. So a few different things. One, I'll just say our program is harder to get into than Harvard. So if you want to go off the college app kind of theme, it is very hard to become a coach with college contact. And so our coaches go through a pretty extensive recruitment and vetting process before they even get to start their training, where they're really getting the bulk of our curriculum and process. So they do screenings with resumes, GPA requirement, also writing sample. They do case studies to gauge EQ and ability to lead and relate to students. And then they also have the actual interviews. So that process is pretty lengthy. Every single coach undergoes a criminal background check. And there's also extensive safety tools and monitoring tools that are in the platform. For example, every meeting is recorded and transcribed. All messaging is monitored. All of those good typical ed tech features. And so, through that process, it's continually evolving, but we really learn like what is the best profile for a coach, because you might have someone who's really, really intelligent and wonderful, but they're not good at connecting with students, or they're not good at getting students to open up or engage. And so it's really become, I think, a secret sauce of our company, our ability to find these phenomenal, amazing coaches that relate well to their students, are able to absorb our training, and use our tools to deliver quality information, and really just be amazing pillars of support for our kids. So it's a huge part of the business. I would say it's like its own mini company, the coach recruitment and training and support systems.
That's great, because I know that would be the first thing that educators would want to know, and obviously parents, like who's counseling my students. Is it Rick over there telling them to take like 6 sections of history of rock and roll, or is somebody that's giving them good advice? No offense, Sam Houston, I know that was a real course when I took that one, so I didn't take it 6 times though. But Sophie, you and I were talking the other day, and my ears perked up when you mentioned, although it's called College Contact, you guys do a lot with those that want to go right into the workforce or that are highly invested in career and tech. Can you speak a little bit about kind of that avenue for students?
Yeah, absolutely. So we recently underwent like a transformation internally where we are always looking to meet the needs of all of our students. We want every student to be able to sit at the table, not just students that want to, go to college or go to 2 year. So we this past year revamped our entire training course. We recertified all of our coaches, and now our coaching network is certified in career advising, workforce development, military ROTC pathways, visual and performing arts, so auditions, that's a whole other world, and then athletic recruiting. So we added all of those buckets. What's really cool is we built a standardized curriculum. So our coaches are trained on a standardized curriculum that is nationwide. However, when we enter a district or even a new state, we always make it a priority to sit with the district team we're working with and partnering with and say, what are the goals you have for this program? Are there certain deliverables that you want to see come out of this program? So a really good example on the career front is we were working with a rural school district in Indiana. And one of their career goals that aligned to the Indiana standards was they wanted every student to have kind of a personal professional project that they pursued over the summer with their coach that was in an area that they were interested in from a career perspective. So we had that curriculum that our coaches are already trained on, which is the professional project. And we sat with the coaches that were going to be in that cohort. And we told them, this is a request of the school, let's work this into the advising plans for each of the students. Each of the students actually conducted a full professional project over the summer. Really cool stuff. One student made a car detailing business. Another one was doing like medical illustrations for research. Another one made like a sticker business, right? So just all these
Wow.
things, very different things that they were interested in, but they had a standardized rubric. They had a standardized curriculum to go through. What are we going to do to get to this end result, right? And it was really cool because the students got to put on their resume, right? Like, I made a company, or I made a nonprofit, or this is a website I built, or this is a YouTube channel I created in an area that I'm interested in. And the school district was really excited about that because there's no way, their one counselor could have, supported all of their students with that over the summer. So that's a good example of the career advising component. Like I said before, it's standardized to the state or the school. So one thing that pretty much all of our districts are interested in is that career interest inventory. So we are really big on return on investment. We're a huge return on investment company. We want our students to understand what that word means and intimately understand, like, if you are interested in nursing, what are the different pathways you can pursue with a nursing career? And let's evaluate, like, from a financial standpoint, what these pathways can mean for you and your family, whether that's 2 year, going to getting a credential, going to a 4 year, and how does that align with your goal at the end of the day? So we want them to understand, not just from a qualitative perspective, but from a quantitative perspective, what their pathway options are. So yeah, it's a very comprehensive approach, but we're really excited about that. And I think, you mentioned College Contact. I think we've had discussions about changing the name because I don't think it's representative. So we're thinking about that. If anyone that's listening has ideas for us, we're open to hearing them. But yeah.
No, that's very cool. Yeah, well, I guess it wouldn't apply because it's way more than y'all are doing way more than just advising on college pathways. And the other thing that I really like about what y'all offer is it's very reasonable for a district to utilize y'all's services and support. And being on the private side, working at ed tech, there are a lot of supports out there that are very, very expensive and a lot of times cost prohibitive. They may be great solutions, but the barrier to entry is very, very high. And you guys don't have that. You guys are very accessible. Is there a school district, and Leah, I'll kick this to you, that you can think of that's just been a big win? Maybe, it's a handful of students, or maybe it's an entire, all of their high schools, but can you think of a specific example that's like, this has really been pretty cool to help this school district?
Yeah, yeah, we have a few, but I'll zero in on one that I think really speaks to kind of what you're saying, just about like barrier to entry and what Sophie just touched on as well, like return on investment.
Yeah.
We recently wrapped up a program with a rural school in Indiana, and you're gonna have to remind me the exact number. What did they got? Like something like
Over 1 million.
over $1 million in scholarship money for all of their kids. So I would say like 50% of their kids maybe ended up with full rides to their universities. It was a district that when we came in, students maybe had one college that they'd heard of that was on their list. They weren't familiar with the Common App. They weren't really clear about how to even approach the college admissions process. They each got matched with a coach and they went through their kind of state standardized curriculum, and they just had phenomenal results. I mean, their principal was like, I've never seen results like this, and I've been at the district for decades, so this is crazy. Um, and I think the return, it was 294% or so. Like,
It's not
dude,
bad.
that I can't remember the exact number, but they like the return on that investment for them. It was a program that they were fully able to afford, that didn't put a burden on their budget, and that just paid back dividends and dividends, not only in their students' futures and the opportunities that their kids are going to have, but also in the scholarship money, in the financial aid that those kids were able to acquire. That, like I said, a lot of these kids don't even know that that's available to them. And they've already ruled out college because they're so concerned about money. So I think that's a really great example.
And I'll add one quick thing there that I think is really important for us, and in this current funding environment, and then also with all these new laws coming out with school choice and
Yeah.
these like, coupon programs, like a lot of our school districts are trying to find ways to retain and bring in more enrollment. And at a high school level, arguably one of the biggest selling points for a school is what are the outcomes, post-secondary outcomes, right? Regardless of if that's college or the kids are getting jobs or they're, going to community college. And so we see our tool being an asset to help promote the school and bring more families to the school or keep more students within the school community. That's a great example. Indiana is a school choice state, right? And so their big ask of us was, we've never really been seen as like a big prominent college prep school. Can you bring that to our school? And we were very excited to help them do that. They're a fantastic school. They've got insane. You need to go listen to their principal, do some ratings and stuff. The coolest admin team ever.
And the sweetest kid.
Sweetest kid.
Nice.
We just like love all of them. So we were happy to add that like element. Not that they really needed it, but it's just overall a fantastic program.
That's a great point because, as you guys well know, now being Texans, our school voucher system went live in February, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what that means for the public side, the private side, the charters, and to be a differentiator in that space is absolutely huge because I tell you what, parents are making choice and accessing things that they've never really been able to access before, and proximity is no longer the barrier. If I want to, I want my student to have access to this type of education, you don't necessarily have to drive across town anymore. So that's a great point to make, that a school district could utilize you guys, like I would guess it early as freshmen, right? You come in and you get your college coach as a freshman student, and That's a huge asset. So kudos to you for thinking in those terms and positioning to help to help schools retain their students and to give families an option that's very compelling. Right. So great job there. I want to finish up by asking a little bit more of business, the business side of things and kind of your story. So I got to ask, two young women in the entrepreneurial space, if you could be a little vulnerable and share some of the things that, all right, that was a hard lesson to learn, but also some of the wins of like how we pushed through it. This was a huge win. Is there anything that comes to mind? Is like, we didn't see that coming and we had to swallow it and keep moving.
How much time?
You know what? Everybody, all entrepreneurs have to have that conversation. So y'all are not alone. I'm going through it a little bit myself as I've taken on. I'm like, oh, I think I can do this. I don't need to work for anybody. But just curious as y'all's perspective. Yeah, I know this is probably gonna be a whole nother show. So, but just one that comes to mind off the top of it.
I would say like an overall theme. I don't know if I have a story right now, but an overall, maybe Leah can think of a story, but I think an overall theme is just in general, like, yes, we have the younger factor. Yes, we have the female factor. I think overall, though, with entrepreneurship, it's that factor of being underestimated, but we love that. Like, we love being able to walk into a room and being underestimated and then coming and showing, proving our value through the outcomes we have for students, through, the way that we've built our program, through our student first approach, right? And then even just the origin story. Uh, we really came into this not really dreaming of being founders, not really like this has really been an organic origin story that has truly been. I know a lot of companies say we're student first, student driven, but like the company was started by the
Yeah.
students on TikTok that like said, hey, can you help us? We need this. So every day we're just constantly reminded when we have challenges with stakeholders, like whoever it may be, that this isn't really our company, right? We are in charge of it, but really the students are the ones that are like driving the train and we always listen to them and do what's best for them. And we still run TikTok. We still have a ton of people follow us and we still give free advice. We still have thousands of kids text us every day, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know that. We have so many kids texting us constantly that are not in our school programs. And, there is hate out there. There's a lot of noise. We've gotten hate mail. We've gotten some mean comments. We've had some mean articles, like just things that, you would expect. But that actually pushes us because it shows that like we're doing something disruptive. And if we weren't, then there wouldn't be noise. And so we're just, we keep pushing through every day, knowing that like the light in the tunnel is like the students have chosen us to do this. And we're going to keep at it until they don't want it anymore.
Leah, you got
Yeah.
one? You got a quick story?
Yeah, I honestly think it's so like it just makes my heart happy to think about how far Sophie and I have come from when we were like two little chickens out of college, just running around trying to figure it out. I remember a really specific moment where one of our investors was being kind of hard on me about our financial model. And at the same time, one of the engineers I was working with was being pretty disrespectful to me. And I first broke down to Sophie crying and then called my dad. And I was just like, I feel like I went to college for business and I'm being asked to do brain surgery and I can't do it. Like, I don't know how to do it. And everyone's disappointed that I'm not an expert at this stuff that I never learned how to do. And I had a really tough moment there, just feeling like, when you're at the helm of a company, you need to have all the answers. And I didn't have them. And so I think I've really grown from that. And I think Sophie too experienced some of the same, just like typical imposter syndrome, trying to find your footing. And I think two things that we've really learned. One, my dad always says to me, and this is kind of nerdy and codey, so I can explain it, but discomfort is a function, not a bug, right? And so discomfort means it has a purpose. You're learning from it. You're growing from it. It's not a bug. It's not a problem. You don't need to feel bad about it. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and you're going to come out of that. And the second one that Sophie and I lean on a lot is just faith. And we feel like our faith has guided us so hard in this, and deep, deep belief that God doesn't lift up people that aren't supposed to be lifted up to these positions. And like Sophie said, it's the biggest blessing in the world to be able to represent these students and give them people to, like we say, sit at the table with them. And I think, that has helped both of us with imposter syndrome a lot. Like, he doesn't make mistakes. So you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be at the helm if he didn't want you there. And you're doing good stuff and you're going to stay there as long as he keeps you there. So, yeah, I think those have been really, really strong drivers for both of us. And like I said, we've just come so far from those two little chickens out of college, which makes my heart so happy.
How do you, I would imagine that, on this journey, you get advice unsolicited from every which way about every detail of your business. How do you sort the good intentions from the other stuff? Have you kind of got a system in place? You don't have to give me the secret sauce. If like you have to, you use it next time you meet somebody, but how have you been able to sift through it? 'Cause I got to imagine that's a lot as well.
Yeah, I think that's like the story of our whole company. Like right there.
Yeah.
That was, I think, honestly, I think she would agree. Like one of our biggest learning lessons building a company was especially the fact that we're younger and we were building this outside of college, and so many people are inspired by our mission and want to like help us. We love it and we'll always take people's feedback and advice. When we were first starting, it was really overwhelming because everyone was kind of giving us different pieces of feedback. Don't enter schools. It's a nightmare, right? Like keep on direct to consumer, or don't, you need to switch to AI, and don't do the human element, or even like little things. And I think we learned, and now Leah and I have a pretty good filter like system, but we learned that we really need to sit together and have like days, like block out days where we are in a room like this with a whiteboard and we just go through everything and we come up with we know is going to be best for the company and our
Yeah.
students and mission. So, we now mentor younger entrepreneurs that are in college or right out of college, and we tell them the same thing. Like, listen to all of our advice we're giving you or anyone else's advice with a grain of salt, and you need to go back and reflect, like, because no one knows your company as well as you do. Is this the right advice for you? And then just test. Like, if you're not really sure, you can start going down one path. If this doesn't seem like it's panning out, you can kind of do a quick pivot. That's the beauty of being in a startup. So, but yeah, I mean, that's like the story of our company for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And being in the same space as you guys, I hear a lot of stuff go out of people's mouths. And I'm like, what's the intent? What's the purpose of that? What's the intent of that? Right. So I can imagine that will be an ongoing journey, just like it is with me and different relationships that I have. I have to be careful and selective, and because when you serve education in some capacity, your reputation and the trust that people have for you is everything. And if you lose that piece of it, is very difficult to get it back, right? And a quick win in terms of money is never been my motivation. And so sometimes I see that people get sidetracked with like, all right, well, we can make a lot of money, but we've got to burn through a lot of relationships to be able to do that. So kudos to you guys for being very selective and staying true to who you guys are as a company and treat each other. Cause I know that's, I'm sure y'all love each other most of the time, but there's gotta be times where like y'all ready to strangle each other to some degree. It happens, right? Family. Um, but I'm just so just not proud because that's not my place, but this is what entrepreneurship is about. It's about finding your way and delivering something that's meaningful. And of course, it's an education, which is near and dear to me and to all of my friends and family. So thank you for what you do. And if a school district that happens to watch this wants to reach out, what's the best way to go about getting in contact and maybe seeing if college contact is for their students?
Yeah, they can email us. Both of our emails are just our first names at yourcollegecontacts.com. We have a long domain, but it's at yourcollegecontacts.com, Leah or Sophie, and we're on email 25 hours out of the day. So we'll get back to you.
Last question: who had the highest GPA in college?
Oh gosh.
Definitely Leah. Um, yeah, definitely Leah. And better
Who?
SATs.
Okay, well,
I
I mean,
I was a little bit OCD about all those things in
where
college.
somebody's got to be right. Like somebody's got to be because
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you could be
Like,
like me with that solid 2.5. Just skating by.
Yeah.
So no, but Thank y'all for joining the show and having a little bit of fun and being vulnerable. I know I asked some questions that, to hear a little bit about your story. So I do appreciate that. And
course.
to all the listeners and viewers out there, this is a great opportunity for your students. So please check them out, like, subscribe, and share. And we will see you next time on Solve for X.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for joining us on Solve for X. Please follow, like, and subscribe for more episodes. And until next time, keep asking the right questions and solving for X.